Ambassador walked through the long hallway of the Galactic Council building. Her shoes made sharp clicking sounds on the metal floor. Behind her, 47 different alien species sat in complete silence. They could not believe what had just happened. Stopped at the big central table in the middle of the room. She picked up the small blue flag of Earth that had sat there for 30 years. The flag felt heavy in her hands, even though it weighed almost nothing. Humanity formally withdraws from all galactic diplomatic relations, she said clearly. Her voice carried to every corner of the massive chamber. This decision is final and takes effect immediately. She placed the flag in her briefcase and walked toward the exit. No one tried to stop her. No one said a word. The silence was so complete that could hear her own heartbeat. 3 days later, the galaxy was in chaos. Chancellor floated in his water tank at the Aquatic Federation headquarters. His blue tentacles moved nervously as he read report after report. Every single human embassy had closed. Every human diplomat had left their posts. Every human representative had simply vanished from galactic politics. "This is impossible," said to his assistant. "No species has ever done this before, not in 12,000 years of council history." His assistant, a young aquatic named Krill, brought him another data pad. "Sir, we have tried to contact Earth through normal diplomatic channels. All we get is an automated message." Read the message on the screen. It was short and cold. "Diplomatic immunity revoked. Commercial traffic only. No exceptions. Do not attempt further diplomatic contact." Across the galaxy, other species leaders were having similar conversations. The ethereal collective, beings made of pure energy, tried to send thought messages to human colonies. The messages bounced back unread. The Silicon Collective sent robot ambassadors to human space stations. The robots were turned away at the borders. Trade continued, but it felt different now. Human traders were polite but distant. They completed their business quickly and left without the usual friendly conversations. It was like talking to strangers instead of allies. Ambassador of the Reptilian Dominion sat in his office, trying to understand what had gone wrong. He pulled up old records on his computer. For the past 30 years, humans had been part of every important galactic decision. They had helped design defense strategies, trade agreements, and peace treaties. But humans had always been treated as the young species. They had been given smaller voices in votes. Their opinions were often ignored. When they suggested new ideas, older species would laugh and say, "When you have been in space as long as us, you will understand." Remembered the final council meeting 3 days ago. The vote had been about 3 human colony worlds called New Boston, Hope Station, and Terra Nova. These worlds were in disputed space near the Hegemony Empire's borders. The Hegemony Empire was known for being aggressive and warlike. They had been demanding those 3 worlds for months, claiming they belonged to ancient hegemony territory. The Empire had threatened war if they did not get the worlds. Most council members wanted to avoid war. They decided to give the 3 worlds to the Hegemony Empire as acceptable losses for peace. The vote was 43 species in favor, 3 against, and 1 abstention. The humans had not been allowed to vote on the fate of their own colonies. Had stood up during that meeting. She had asked to speak, but the council chairman told her to sit down. "This matter does not concern Earth directly," the chairman had said. "These are council territories that happen to have human settlers." Had tried to explain that over 2 million humans lived on those 3 worlds. They had built cities, farms, and families there. But the council was not interested in listening. "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few," the chairman had said. 3 worlds are a small price to pay for galactic peace." That was when he had walked out. Now realized how badly the council had miscalculated. Intelligence reports showed something that worried him greatly. Human ships were leaving every joint military base, every shared research station, and every mixed species colony. They were not abandoning these places in panic. They were leaving in an organized, planned way. The humans had prepared for this moment. More reports came in throughout the day. Human engineers had quietly removed critical systems from shared technology projects. Human scientists had taken their research data and equipment. Human military advisors had deleted strategic plans and tactical databases. It was as if 30 years of human participation in galactic civilization was being carefully erased. The most disturbing report came from the Outer Rim territories. Long-range sensors detected large human fleets moving through space, but they were not heading toward Earth or the disputed colony worlds. They were moving toward unknown destinations, following paths that made no sense to traditional galactic navigation. "Where are they going?" asked his intelligence chief. "We do not know, sir. Their ships use new technology we have never seen before. They seem to be able to jump longer distances than any known drive system allows." Chancellor called an emergency council session. Representatives from all member species gathered in the Great Chamber. For the first time in decades, the room felt empty. The section where human diplomats had sat was completely vacant. "We must contact Earth," said the representative from the hives. "This situation is unacceptable. Humanity cannot simply leave the galactic community." "How do we contact them?" asked the Silicon Collective ambassador. "They have blocked all diplomatic communication channels." "Send a fleet to Earth," suggested the Hegemony Empire representative. "Demand they return to negotiations." The room erupted in angry voices. Some species supported the idea of forcing humans back to the negotiating table. Others worried about the consequences of threatening Earth directly. Chancellor raised his tentacles for silence. "We will not send warships to threaten humanity. That would prove their point about how we treat them." But as the debate continued, one question hung in the air, unspoken but understood by everyone. What if humanity did not want to come back? What if they had built something better than the Galactic Council? Outside the council building, normal galactic life continued. But everyone could feel that something fundamental had changed. Humanity had walked away from 12,000 years of tradition, and nobody knew what would happen next. 2 months had passed since humanity cut off all diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. The galaxy was beginning to understand just how much they had lost. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the worst military disaster in recent galactic history unfold on his screens. Red warning lights flashed across the command center. Battle reports scrolled down his displays in an endless stream of bad news. The Scourge Collective had returned. The Scourge were not like other species. They were a hive mind that consumed entire worlds, turning planets into giant breeding factories for their ships. For thousands of years, they would disappear into dark space, then return stronger than before. This time, they had brought the largest fleet anyone had ever seen. "Sir, we have lost contact with the defense stations around Prime," reported his communications officer, a nervous ethereal being whose energy form flickered with stress. "What about the Fourth Fleet?" asked. "Destroyed, sir. All ships lost." Scaled hands gripped the rail in front of him. In just 3 days, the Scourge had wiped out 5 entire star systems. Billions of beings had died. 3 council worlds had gone completely dark, their populations consumed or converted into Scourge biomass. The problem was simple but devastating. Without humans, the galactic military had forgotten how to fight unpredictable enemies. For centuries, Council military doctrine had been built on tradition and honor. Fleets formed neat battle lines. Commanders followed ancient tactical manuals. Battles were fought according to rules that had been established long before most current species had reached the stars. This approach had worked fine against other civilized species who followed similar rules. But the Scourge did not care about honor or tradition. They attacked in chaotic swarms, used living ships that could heal themselves, and changed their tactics constantly. It had been human military advisors who figured out how to fight the Scourge effectively. Humans did not care about traditional battle formations. They studied their enemies, adapted quickly, and came up with creative solutions that older species would never consider. But the Council had never officially acknowledged human contributions to their defense strategies. Human advisors worked quietly in the background, their innovative tactics credited to the senior alien commanders who implemented them. Now those human advisors were gone, and the galaxy was paying the price. "Sir, incoming message from Admiral OK of the 7th Fleet," the communications officer announced. The holographic image of a tall, plant-like being appeared in front of. Admiral Ok's normally green skin had turned pale yellow with fear. "My fleet is trapped in the Vega system," OK said quickly. "The Scourge have surrounded us using some kind of new formation we have never seen before. My tactical computers cannot calculate a response." studied the tactical display OK was sharing. The Scourge ships were arranged in a complex three-dimensional pattern that seemed to make no sense. But somehow, it was working. Every time the Galactic fleet tried to break out, they ran into another layer of Scourge vessels. "Have you tried the maneuver?" suggested, referring to a traditional escape tactic. "Yes, sir, it failed. The Scourge seemed to know exactly what we were going to do before we did it." Felt a chill run through his body. The Scourge had learned to predict galactic military tactics. Without human creativity and adaptability, the Council forces were completely outmatched. Similar disasters were happening across the galaxy. The Hives lost their entire border defense network in 6 hours. The Silicon Collective's robot fleets were being hacked and turned against their own creators. The Ethereal Collective's energy-based weapons were somehow being absorbed and redirected by new types of Scourge. But the most disturbing reports were not about the battles themselves. Intelligence officers were detecting strange activities in human space. Lieutenant L, a young aquatic intelligence analyst, brought another data pad to Chancellor. "Sir, our long-range sensors have detected massive human fleet movements." Examined the data with growing confusion. "These readings make no sense. According to this, human ships are moving through areas of space that should be impossible to navigate." "Yes, sir. They appear to be using some kind of new propulsion technology we have never seen before. Their ships are jumping much further than any known drive system should allow." "Where are they going?" "That is the strange part, sir. They are not moving toward the Scourge invasion zones. They seem to be heading toward completely different targets." More reports trickled in throughout the day. Human fleets were being detected near Scourge supply bases in the dark nebulae, areas that galactic forces had never been able to reach. Other human ships were spotted around planets that intelligence had identified as potential Scourge breeding worlds. But the humans were not contacting the Council to coordinate these activities. They were operating completely independently. The most shocking discovery came when a reptilian scout ship accidentally intercepted a human military transmission. "Message begins," the translation system announced in Admiral's command center. "Unit 7, this is command. Target confirmed as Scourge Resource Hub. Execute Plan Omega and withdraw to safe distance. Do not engage Council forces if encountered. Our mission parameters remain unchanged." Stared at the intelligence officer who had brought him the report. "Plan Omega? What is Plan Omega?" "We do not know, sir. This is the first time we have heard this term." "And what did they mean about not engaging Council forces?" The intelligence officer looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I think they mean that if they encounter our ships, they will simply ignore us. We are not part of their mission." The implications of this were terrifying. Humanity was conducting its own war against the Scourge, following plans that the Council knew nothing about. They had technology that the galactic military could not understand, and they were treating Council forces as irrelevant bystanders. Emergency Council sessions became a daily occurrence. Species representatives argued constantly about what to do. Some wanted to demand that humanity share their anti-Scourge strategies. Others suggested that the Council should focus on defending itself without human help. But as the casualty reports continued to pile up, one uncomfortable truth became impossible to ignore. Humanity was not struggling against the Scourge like the Council was. Whatever they were doing, it was working. 3 weeks after the Scourge invasion began, the first miracle happened. An entire Scourge battle group, 12 massive Hive ships, suddenly exploded simultaneously in the system. No Council forces were anywhere near that location. No galactic weapons could have caused that kind of coordinated destruction. The explosion pattern was too precise, too surgical to be an accident. Someone had planned this attack perfectly. More mysterious Scourge losses followed. Supply convoys vanished without a trace. Breeding facilities on distant planets went silent. Critical Scourge communication relays were destroyed by unknown forces. Each incident showed the same characteristics: perfect timing, overwhelming precision, and no traces of how it had been accomplished. The Council military leadership began to realize something that filled them with both hope and dread. Humanity was not just fighting the Scourge. They were systematically dismantling the entire Scourge war machine using methods that the galaxy could not comprehend. But they were doing it without any communication or coordination with the Council. Humanity was solving the galaxy's greatest threat while treating the Galactic Council as completely irrelevant. And that perhaps was the most frightening thing of all. Captain Maria Santos stood in the command center of the stealth ship Prometheus, watching her screens with calm satisfaction. Around her, the ship hummed with technology that the Galactic Council did not even know existed. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant from the weapons station. "Scourge command ship bearing 27 Mark IV. Range, 15,000 kilometers and closing. They still have not detected us." Maria smiled. The Scourge ship was massive, easily 10 times larger than the Prometheus. Its biohull pulsed with alien life, covered in weapons that could destroy an entire Council fleet, but it could not see them. Human stealth technology did not work like the simple light-bending systems that other species used. Human ships could bend space itself, creating bubbles of altered reality that made them invisible to sensors, eyes, and even gravity detectors. "Fire when ready," Maria ordered. The torpedo that launched from the Prometheus was no larger than a human fist, but it carried an artificial intelligence that had been learning Scourge behavior patterns for 6 months. The torpedo would hunt its target for weeks if necessary, adapting its approach until it found a way through any defense. The Scourge command ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. 14 other explosions followed across the star system as Maria's sister ships completed their coordinated attack. In less than 60 seconds, an entire Scourge battle group had been eliminated. "Command, this is Santos," Maria spoke into her communication system. "Operation Ghost Light complete. All targets eliminated. No Council forces detected in the area." "Acknowledged, Prometheus. Return to base for resupply. New targets will be assigned in 72 hours. Maria turned to her navigation officer. "Take us home, mister." The Prometheus vanished from normal space, using a drive system that could jump across distances that would take Council ships weeks to travel. They were heading back to Hidden Valley, a secret human base built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the edge of nowhere. Hidden Valley was one of hundreds of such bases that humanity had been building for the past 10 years. While the Galactic Council had focused on grand space stations and visible displays of power, humans had been creating an invisible network of military facilities that could not be detected or mapped by anyone else. Admiral stood in the main command center of Hidden Valley, watching a three-dimensional map of the galaxy that showed information no Council computer had ever processed. Red dots marked confirmed Scourge positions. Blue dots showed human forces. Yellow indicated Council fleet locations. The map told a story that would have shocked the galactic leadership. Humanity was not just fighting the Scourge invasion. They were conducting a systematic campaign to destroy the entire Scourge infrastructure throughout the galaxy. "Status report," requested from his intelligence chief. Commander brought up detailed displays on the main screen. "Sir, we have eliminated 67% of known Scourge resource facilities. Their supply lines have been cut in 93 separate locations. We estimate their overall military capacity has been reduced by 45% in the past month. And Council casualties? Still rising, sir. They lost another fleet yesterday trying to defend the Vega colonies. Total Council military losses are now approaching 30% of their active forces." Nodded grimly. The Council was fighting the way they always fought, with honor, tradition, and predictable tactics. The Scourge were defeating them easily because galactic military doctrine had not changed in centuries. But humanity had spent the past 30 years studying every species in the galaxy, learning their strengths and weaknesses, understanding how they thought and how they fought. Humans had become experts at asymmetric warfare, finding creative solutions to impossible problems. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from Admiral in the Outer Territories," the communications officer announced. The holographic image of Admiral appeared in front of. Behind her, the command center of her flagship buzzed with activity. "We have a problem," said without preamble. "Council forces just attempted to interfere with Operation Dark Star. A reptilian fleet tried to board one of our supply ships." "Injuries?" "None on our side. We used the sleep gas protocol. The reptilian crew will wake up in a few hours with no memory of what they saw, but this creates a policy question." "Understood immediately." Human forces had been carefully avoiding any direct contact with Council military units. Their orders were clear: complete the mission, but do not harm galactic forces, even if those forces tried to interfere. It was a delicate balance. Humanity was saving the galaxy from the Scourge threat, but they were doing it without permission and without cooperation from the official galactic government. Continue current protocols, decided. We avoid Council forces whenever possible. If contact is unavoidable, we use non-lethal methods to protect our operations. Understood, sir. Out. Turned back to the main display. The galaxy map now showed new information, intercepted Council communications that revealed growing panic among galactic leadership. They were finally beginning to understand that humanity possessed military capabilities far beyond anything they had imagined. The breakthrough had come from 30 years of quiet preparation. While Council species had focused on building larger ships and more powerful weapons, humans had invested in technology that changed the rules of warfare completely. Human ships could travel faster, hide more effectively, and strike with precision that seemed impossible. Human intelligence networks could predict enemy movements weeks in advance. Human weapons could adapt to any defense and find weaknesses that other species could not see. But the most important difference was philosophical. Council military thinking was based on tradition and hierarchy. Human military thinking was based on results and adaptation. Sir, we are receiving a transmission on open Council frequencies, the communications officer reported. Source is Admiral's personal command codes. Smiled, it was time to send a message to the galaxy. He activated the communication system, knowing that his words would be heard in Council chambers, military headquarters, and intelligence centers across dozens of star systems. To the Galactic Council leadership, began. This is Admiral of the Human Deep Space Fleet. We are aware that our military operations against the Scourge have been detected and monitored by Council forces. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Let us be clear about our intentions. We are not fighting this war for the Galactic Council. We are ending this war despite the Galactic Council. The Scourge threat will be eliminated because it threatens human colonies and human interests. Another pause. Council forces that attempt to interfere with our operations will be disabled but not harmed. Council worlds that request our assistance will be protected according to our own judgment of strategic value. But understand this, we are not seeking Council approval for our actions. Looked directly into the camera. The Council had 30 years to treat humanity as an equal partner in galactic affairs. You chose instead to treat us as children who should be grateful for scraps from your table. The vote to sacrifice human colonies to the hegemony empire made your position clear. He gestured to the battle display behind him. These are the consequences of that decision. Humanity's colonies will be protected by humanity's military. Humanity's interests will be advanced by humanity's technology. The galaxy is welcome to benefit from our success, but you will do so as observers, not as partners. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, Council leaders stared at their screens in shock. The message had not been angry or threatening. It had been calm, professional, and absolutely final. Humanity was not asking for permission. They were not seeking reconciliation. They had moved beyond the need for galactic approval and were creating their own version of how civilization should work. And the terrifying part was that their version seemed to be working much better than anything the Council had ever accomplished. 6 months after humanity had cut all diplomatic ties, Counselor floated through the corridors of the Silicon Collective's main research facility. Her crystalline body reflected the emergency lights that had been flashing for weeks. The facility was in chaos, just like everything else in Council space. Another system has fallen, her assistant reported, handing her a data pad with trembling mechanical fingers. The hegemony empire took the Rigel colonies yesterday. Our defense fleet never even saw them coming. Processed the information with growing despair. Without human-designed early warning systems, Council forces were being caught by surprise constantly. The hegemony empire had become bold in their expansion, taking advantage of the chaos that humanity's withdrawal had created. The Scourge invasion had been stopped, but not by anything the Council had done. Human forces had systematically destroyed scourge infrastructure across the galaxy with surgical precision that the Council still could not understand. But stopping one threat had not solved the larger problem. The galaxy was falling apart. "How many worlds have we lost to the hegemony this month?" asked. 17, Counselor. And intelligence reports suggest they are planning to take the entire Outer Rim sector next week. Its crystalline structure dimmed with stress. The hegemony empire had always been aggressive, but they had been contained by the combined strength of the galactic military. Now, with Council forces weakened by the Scourge War and demoralized by constant defeats, the hegemony was expanding faster than anyone could stop them. But the military disasters were only part of the problem. The real crisis was political. 12 species had formally withdrawn from the Galactic Council in the past month. They had not followed humanity's example of cutting all diplomatic ties. Instead, they had simply announced that the Council was no longer capable of protecting their interests. The Alliance had been the first to leave, followed by the Trader Guilds, then the Independent Colonies Federation. Each departure weakened the Council's authority and encouraged others to consider leaving as well. "Counselor," her assistant said quietly, "there is something else you need to know." "What now?" Intelligence reports indicate that 37 species have sent secret diplomatic missions to human space in the past month. Felt her entire structure vibrate with shock. Secret missions to request what? "We believe they are requesting protection agreements directly with humanity." This was the news that had been dreading. Species were bypassing the Council entirely, going directly to humanity for the security and stability that the galactic government could no longer provide. "I need to go to Sol," announced suddenly. Her assistant's optical sensors flashed in surprise. "Counselor, the humans have refused to meet with any official Council representatives. They have made their position very clear." "Then I will go as an individual, not as a representative. Someone needs to understand what humanity is building out there." 3 days later, arrived at the edge of the Sol system in a small, unmarked ship. She had expected to be turned away immediately, but instead she received a polite message directing her to Luna Station for customs processing. The station around Earth's moon was unlike anything she had ever seen. It was massive, easily 3 times larger than the Council's main headquarters station. But more importantly, it was bustling with activity from dozens of species she recognized, and many she did not. As her ship was guided to a docking bay, saw something that made her processes freeze. Ships from species that had never been part of the galactic community were docked alongside vessels from former Council members. Independent colonies, rebel factions, and small civilizations that the Council had always ignored were all represented. A human customs officer, a woman with dark skin and kind eyes, greeted at the airlock. "Welcome to Luna Station, Counselor," the woman said politely. "I am Director Martinez. We have been expecting you." "You have?" "We monitor Council communications for security purposes. When you requested permission to visit Sol, we decided to allow it. We are curious about what questions you might have." Director Martinez led through the station, and what she saw challenged everything she thought she understood about civilization. The technology was clearly decades ahead of anything in Council space. The transportation systems moved silently and efficiently. The life support systems created perfect environments for dozens of different species. The computational networks processed information at speeds that should have been impossible. But it was not just the technology that amazed her. It was the way everything worked together. Species that had been enemies for centuries were cooperating on joint projects. The station's medical bay was staffed by human doctors working alongside Healer Guild physicians who had left Council space. The engineering sections combined human innovation with silicon collective computational power and precision. "How is this possible?" asked as they walked through a garden area where children from 6 different species played together. "It is possible when you stop trying to force ancient hierarchies onto modern problems," Director Martinez explained. "The Council system was built on the idea that older species should have more authority. Our system is built on the idea that useful contributions should be rewarded regardless of who makes them." They entered a conference room with a wall-sized window that looked out into space. The view took breath away. Hundreds of ships moved in coordinated patterns around massive construction projects. New space stations were being built, along with what appeared to be the framework for an artificial world. "What are you building?" asked. "A better future," Martinez replied simply. "The Council spent 12,000 years maintaining the status. We are creating something new." Over the next few hours, Martinez showed intelligence reports that revealed the scope of humanity's new alliance. 46 species had signed protection agreements with human forces. 23 former Council worlds had requested to join the Human Confederation. 12 independent civilizations had offered technology exchanges. But the most shocking revelation came when Martinez showed her economic data. Trade between alliance members has increased by 400% in 6 months, Martinez explained. Productivity is up, innovation is accelerating, standard of living improvements are being measured in years instead of centuries. How? By removing bureaucracy and focusing on results. When you stop requiring 17 different committees to approve every new idea, progress happens much faster. Studied the data with growing amazement. Worlds that had been struggling economically under Council regulations were thriving under human administration. Species that had been locked into traditional roles were discovering new capabilities. "But what about stability?" asked. "What about tradition? The Council system has maintained peace for 12,000 years. Martinez looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Counselor, the Council system maintained stagnation for 12,000 years. You called it peace, but it was really just the absence of growth. When the Scourge invaded, your stable system collapsed in weeks. When the hegemony became aggressive, your traditional defenses failed completely." She gestured to the bustling activity outside the window. "This is what real stability looks like. Systems that adapt instead of breaking. Cooperation based on mutual benefit instead of ancient hierarchies. Progress that benefits everyone instead of maintaining privilege for the oldest species." As prepared to leave, Martinez gave her one final piece of information. "We know that the Council is considering sending military forces to demand our return to galactic politics," she said calmly. "I want you to understand something very clearly. We will defend ourselves if attacked, and our defensive capabilities are significantly more advanced than anything the Council has seen." "Are you threatening us?" "No, I am informing you that we have moved beyond the need for Council approval or Council threats. You are welcome to join us as equals, but we will not be ordered around by a failing government that sacrificed our people for political convenience." Martinez smiled, but her eyes were serious. "The choice is yours, Counselor. You can try to force us back into a system that does not work, or you can help us build something better." When returned to Council space, she carried a message that would change everything. Humanity had not been waiting for the Council to take them back. They had been building a replacement that worked better than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The only question now was whether the Council would have the wisdom to join them, or the foolishness to try to stop them. 1 year after humanity had walked away from galactic politics, Ambassador stood in the main assembly hall of New Geneva Station. The massive space station hung in neutral space, far from any single species' territory. It was easily the largest artificial structure anyone had ever built, dwarfing even the old Council headquarters. But size was not what made New Geneva Station remarkable. What made it remarkable was what was happening inside. "The Galactic Assembly will now come to order," announced from the central podium. Around her, representatives from 83 different species took their seats in the amphitheater-style chamber. 83 species, 36 more than the old Council had ever included. Looked across the assembled delegates and felt a quiet satisfaction. In the front rows sat representatives from the major galactic powers, the Aquatic Federation, the Reptilian Dominion, the Silicon Collective. But they were no longer the only voices that mattered. Behind them sat delegates from species the old Council had ignored for centuries. The nomadic traders who had been dismissed as primitive wanderers. The deep space miners who had been considered too specialized to contribute to general policy. The colonial federations, whose voices had been drowned out by the older, more established civilizations. "Before we begin formal proceedings," continued, "let us acknowledge what we have accomplished together in the past 6 months." The main display screen lit up with statistics that told the story of a galaxy transformed. Trade had increased by 600%. Technological innovation was advancing at rates that had seemed impossible under the old system. Most importantly, not a single member world had been lost to external threats or internal conflicts. The Scourge threat has been completely eliminated, reported. The Hegemony Empire has agreed to observer status and cessation of all territorial expansion. 47 new worlds have achieved spacefaring status with our assistance, and we have established the galaxy's first truly universal translation and communication network. Polite applause rippled through the chamber, but could see deeper emotions on many faces. Relief, hope, and something that had been rare in galactic politics for centuries. Genuine optimism about the future. Chancellor raised a tentacle to request permission to speak, nodded to him. In the old system, would have been one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. In the new assembly, he was one voice among many, but his voice was still valued. Director said formally, the Aquatic Federation wishes to express our gratitude for humanity's leadership in creating this new system. But I must ask the question that many of us are thinking. Why did humanity choose cooperation over conquest? You had the power to simply rule the galaxy. Why share it? Smiled, it was a question she had been expecting for months. Because conquest would have given us the galaxy we left behind, she replied. Stagnant, inefficient, and ultimately fragile. What we wanted was something better than what existed before. She gestured to the viewing windows that showed the bustling construction activity around New Geneva Station. Every species in this assembly brings unique capabilities to our alliance. The Aquatic Federation's environmental management, the Silicon Collective's computational power, the Hive's precision engineering, the Trader Guild's economic expertise. Humans are good at adaptation and innovation, but we recognize that we could not build a truly successful civilization by ourselves. Admiral, representing the reptilian dominion, leaned forward in his seat. But surely, there must be some species that have proven too difficult to work with. Not everyone can be trusted with equal authority. His expression became more serious. You are right, Admiral. Not every species has been invited to full membership in the Galactic Assembly. She pressed a control, and a section of the gallery came into view. There, sitting in seats marked Observer Status, were representatives from several species, including the Hegemony Empire. Observers may attend our sessions and speak when recognized, explained. But they cannot vote on assembly decisions until they demonstrate a commitment to cooperative principles rather than aggressive expansion. The Hegemony representative, a tall humanoid with gray skin and bright red eyes, stood up slowly. The Empire wishes to state for the record that we understand the conditions for full membership, he said in a voice that carried across the chamber. We have ceased all territorial expansion. We have returned the 3 human colonies that were awarded to us by the old council, and we have begun implementing the social reforms that the Assembly requested. Nodded respectfully. The Empire's progress has been noted and appreciated. Full membership review will be conducted in 6 months, as scheduled. The Hegemony representative sat down and could see something in his expression that would have been unthinkable a year ago: humility. The Empire had learned that aggression was no longer a path to galactic influence. This brings us to today's primary agenda item, continued. The formal dissolution of the old Galactic Council and the establishment of the new Galactic Assembly as the recognized government for galactic affairs. This was the moment that everyone had been waiting for. The old council had continued to meet for months after humanity's withdrawal, but it had become increasingly irrelevant. Species after species had quietly stopped sending representatives. Important decisions were being made at New Geneva Station instead of at council headquarters. Representative Krill from the Ethereal Collective spoke up. The collective wishes to state that this transition has been remarkably smooth. We expected chaos when the old system collapsed. Instead, we found stability and prosperity. Because the new system actually works, added the delegate from the independent mining guilds. Instead of spending months debating whether smaller species deserve representation, we just give everyone a voice and let results speak for themselves. Looked around the chamber one more time. Are there any objections to the formal transition? Silence filled the enormous hall. Then slowly, Chancellor raised his tentacle again. I have one final question, Director. The old council was based on the principle that wisdom came with age, that older species should guide younger ones. What principle guides this new assembly? Had been preparing for this question for a year. The assembly is guided by the principle that wisdom comes from results, not age. That progress benefits everyone, not just the established powers. That cooperation produces better outcomes than competition, and that every sentient species has something valuable to contribute to galactic civilization. She paused, looking directly at. The old council asked smaller species to be patient, to wait their turn, to accept that newer voices mattered less than older ones. We learned patience, Chancellor. We learned to be patient while we built something better. Gestured to encompass the entire assembly. Today, we invite every species to help us continue building that future together, not as subjects and rulers, but as equal partners in the greatest cooperative project the galaxy has ever seen. The vote to formally establish the Galactic Assembly was unanimous among voting members. As the session adjourned, stood at the great viewing window watching ships from dozens of species working together on the construction of new stations, research facilities, and exploration vessels. The galaxy had not just been saved from its immediate threats. It had been transformed into something that none of the old species had thought possible. Ambassador approached her as the chamber emptied. "Director," he said quietly, "I must admit that I did not believe this would work. Too many species, too many different interests. I thought it would collapse into chaos within weeks." Smiled, the old council thought the same thing about humanity when we first joined galactic society. Too young, too inexperienced, too different from established norms. And now, looked out at the stars, where human ships worked alongside vessels from 82 other species, building a future that none of them could have achieved alone. Now we are proving that cooperation is stronger than tradition, that innovation is more valuable than age, and that the best way to predict the future is to build it yourself. The galaxy had not asked humanity to be patient. They had demanded it. But humanity had learned patience in a way that no one had expected. They had been patient enough to build something better than what had existed before. And now, the entire galaxy was benefiting from that patience. Outside New Geneva Station, in the deep black of space, construction lights twinkled like new stars as 83 species worked together to build the future they all wanted to share.